The Valhari research vessel, Seeker of Winds, had been running deep space scans near the edge of the Tan-R system for 3 weeks when the Drath found them. There was no warning, no border alarm, no hail on open channel. One moment the scanner showed nothing but empty black in every direction for 1,000,000 kilometers, and the next moment 3 ships were simply there, triangular, massive, darker than the space around them, dropping out of subspace less than 40 kilometers off the port bow. The guns were already firing before anyone on the bridge could speak. The first shot hit the engine room directly. The explosion tore through 4 decks at once and sealed 6 corridors automatically. The second shot struck the outer hull near the science wing and left a crack that the ship's emergency system spent 18 long seconds arguing about, before deciding to seal with foam rather than a metal plate. The third shot went wide. It did not matter. The first 2 had done enough. Mirabelle was in the lower biology lab when the ship screamed. That was the only honest word for the sound the hull made. A full, deep metal scream, the kind that the body understands before the brain does. She was thrown sideways into a storage shelf. Glass sample tubes fell and shattered around her feet. The lights dropped to red. Emergency alarms started in 3 different pitches at the same time, and none of them agreed with each other about what was wrong. She lay on the floor. 1 second, maybe 2. Then her body moved without waiting for her to tell it to. 8 years of research certifications and 2 emergency drills per year. She had complained endlessly about those drills, had thought them pointless and excessive and a waste of good science time. She grabbed the nearest wall fixture, pulled herself upright, and ran. The corridor outside the lab was filling with thin smoke from somewhere deep below her. Not here yet, not immediate, but the smell was already there. Burning electrical insulation. The specific bitter chemical smell. That meant the damage was not just to metal and hull plating, but to the systems running through all of it, the nerves of the ship. Other crew members moved past her in the corridor. No one was screaming. That almost surprised her. Valhari did not tend to scream in emergencies. They went quiet and fast instead, which was either a mark of good training or something deeper and older than training. She pressed through them and kept moving toward the command deck. Another explosion hit somewhere behind her. She felt it through the soles of her boots. More than she heard it, a heavy grinding thump that traveled up through the floor like the ship was being struck by something that had no interest in stopping. She kept moving. The command deck was worse than she had prepared herself for. Captain Sale was already at the main station, 3 of his 4 hands working across damage report screens simultaneously. His headtails were pressed flat against the back of his neck, the involuntary Valhari sign of extreme focused control. One of his lower hands held a folded cloth against a cut on his head. Dark purple blood had already soaked through it and was running between his fingers. The navigator was dead. Mira knew it without checking. A ceiling support beam had come down across the navigation station. She looked at it for 1 second, and then made herself look somewhere else. Tan, the communications officer, 40 years in space service, the oldest crew member aboard, the one who complained about the coffee temperature every single morning without fail, was slumped across his console with his headset still hanging around his neck. Mira crossed to him. She grabbed his shoulder. Tan, he turned toward her. His eyes were open but unfocused. His whole body had the loose, unresisting quality of something that had been shaken too hard and had not yet settled. Tan, look at me. Can you work the console? He looked somewhere near her face. Tan, I need you to. 1 slow shake of his head. Then his eyes drifted away from her entirely, going somewhere inward, somewhere she could not follow him. She pulled the headset carefully from around his neck and sat down in his chair. Main drive is offline, Captain Sale said from across the deck. His voice was absolutely flat. He was reading the damage report aloud in the voice of someone who had made a private arrangement with himself to feel all of this later, when there was time for it. Secondary drive offline. Hull breach in sections 4 through 7 sealed and holding. Life support stable on decks 1, 2, and 3. He stopped reading for a moment. Deck 4 is gone. 12 crew members had their quarters on deck 4. Nobody spoke. Mira looked at the communications console. A third of it was dark, burnt circuits, dead and gone. But the emergency broadcast system was still lit green. Low power transmitter but long range. Every known frequency at once. I am going to send a distress call, she said. Sale looked over at her. The Drath will hear it. Everyone in range will hear it. She met his eyes steadily. That is the point. He held her gaze for a moment. Then he looked back at his screens and did not tell her to stop. She opened every frequency the system would allow. Emergency band, civilian trade band, military command band, Union diplomatic relay, Kel Consortium emergency line, Sheriff neutral frequencies, everything. She recorded the message once, clearly, and put it on a 3-minute repeat loop. The Seeker of Winds crippled and unable to move. 11 crew members confirmed dead, more missing and unaccounted for. 23 survivors confirmed at time of transmission, under direct threat from Drath Collective forces. Position data attached to signal, requesting immediate assistance from any vessel, any species, any affiliation. This is an emergency. Please respond. She sent it out into the dark. Then she looked at the scanner. The 3 Drath ships had stopped firing. They were circling now, a slow, wide pattern around the broken Velhari vessel. Unhurried, patient in the specific way of something that has learned its prey, cannot run and sees no reason to rush. They had all the dark and all the time in it. The hours that followed were the kind that leave marks. The crew worked. They sealed what could be sealed and marked what could not. They carried the injured down to the medical bay, on Deck 2, the most protected deck on the ship. They counted their dead and tried to be precise about it. Mira sat at the communications console and listened to static and waited. The first response came 47 minutes after the distress call. A voice from the Galactic Union relay station at Harvin Point, 8 light hours away, automated in tone, careful in phrasing. The Union relay station had received their distress call. The matter was being escalated to the Emergency Response Council. The council had noted that the Tanar system and the surrounding deep space region fell within territory formerly claimed by the Drath Collective under the Outer Reach Boundary Agreement of Standard Year 2291. Any Union vessel dispatched to the area would constitute a potential provocation under the Interstellar Non-Interference Compact. The Council would convene within 12 standard hours to determine appropriate next steps and issue a formal response. 12 hours. Mira looked at the air supply reading on the console. 29 hours remaining. The second response came from the Kel Consortium Trade Hub at Palavar Station. Close enough that she could have seen its lights on a long-range telescope. The Kel had 3 military escort ships docked there on permanent rotation. She had never been so close to something like hope as she was in the 2 seconds before that message finished playing. The station manager was deeply and genuinely sorry. The consortium's formal neutrality agreement with the Drath Collective, signed 4 years prior, explicitly and without ambiguity prohibited Kel military vessels from entering Drath-claimed space in any capacity that could be construed as interference. The manager understood this was an extremely difficult situation. He wanted them to know that their distress call had been officially logged in the station record. He wished them all the very best. He wished them the very best. Mira sat with that for a moment. 2 more responses arrived within the next hour. A Shareth religious vessel whose doctrine of strict nonviolence applied, apparently, to watching others die rather than risk witnessing any act of conflict. A Velhari military patrol 14 hours away, still awaiting formal authorization from the High Council to proceed, authorization which required a written petition and a review period of no fewer than. She stopped reading. She leaned back in Tan's chair and looked up at the red ceiling. She thought about the 12 people who had lived on Deck 4, and whether any of them had been awake when it happened. She thought about the 2 crew members in the medical bay, who the doctor said might not last the night. She thought about 29 hours of air and the Drath ships circling outside, and all the very sorry voices from all the very safe places. She got up and walked to the medical bay. The room smelled like antiseptic and blood. 4 crew members lay on the cots. One was awake, watching the ceiling with the still expression of someone working very hard not to think. One was unconscious, bandaged across the chest, breathing in shallow, uneven pulls. One was sleeping, genuinely sleeping, exhausted past fear. The last one, a young researcher named Pell who had been on his first deep space assignment, was talking quietly in the old coastal dialect, the one old people used when they were very far from home and very scared. Mira stood in the doorway for a moment. She did not go in. There was nothing she could add to what was already in that room. She went back to the console. On the scanner, one of the Drath ships had broken from the circular pattern. It was moving closer. Not fast. Slowly and deliberately. The way something moves when it has decided to examine more carefully what it has already caught. It was still well outside weapons range. Not that weapons range mattered anymore. 27 hours of air. She stared at the scanner. At the Drath ship getting closer. At the 2 that were still circling. At all the empty black around them and all the very sorry voices going quiet. The console chirped. It was different from the other signals. Not a relay, not a forwarded message. A direct tight beam transmission, military-grade encryption, pointed straight at the Seeker of Winds, from somewhere past the 4th planet of the Tanar system, from outside the Drath patrol zone entirely. She nearly knocked the entire console over reaching for the receiver. Static, short, a half second, then a voice, human. She knew it immediately. 3 years of interspecies linguistics work, hundreds of hours of recorded human communications, a language she had always found interesting for its particular bluntness, its impatience with decoration. This was a woman's voice, low, clear, direct. The kind of voice that had decided a long time ago that every word it used was going to mean exactly what it said and nothing more. Research vessel Seeker of Winds, this is the UNS Iron Covenant, Commander Elena Voss commanding. We received your distress signal. A pause, short, like the pause of someone who has already made every decision that needed making and is now simply stating them. We are currently 4 hours from your position at maximum drive. We are en route to you now. Keep your emergency beacon active so we can track your exact location. Do not acknowledge this transmission on any open channel. We do not want to give the Drath fleet information about our approach angle. Another pause. Shorter this time. We are coming. Sit tight. The channel went quiet. Mira sat completely still for a long moment. She pulled up the human species file on her secondary screen. Professional reflex, she kept files on 43 species. Homeworld, Earth, Galactic Community Status, Associate Member, Tier 3. Military classification, active and expanding. Known territorial engagements, multiple, several unresolved. Notable behavioral flags, aggressive engagement doctrine, high operational risk tolerance, rapid tactical adaptation. She looked at the scanner. 3 Drath warships, 1 human vessel, 4 hours out. She searched the public military registry for the Iron Covenant Heavy Cruiser class, the largest dedicated warship type humanity currently operated, commissioned 14 years ago. 5 recorded combat engagements in the last 8 years alone. The registry did not specify outcomes. Military registries rarely did. It was coming anyway. 1 ship, 4 hours. Against 3 Drath warships in claimed Drath space, with every other major civilization in the region either too far away, too bound by agreements, or too careful to move. And a human voice saying, "We are coming," with no hesitation in it at all. Captain, Mira said. Sale turned from his screen. A human warship is coming. She watched his face. 1 ship. 4 hours away. They heard the distress call. He looked at the scanner for a long time. At the 3 Drath ships. At the 1 inching closer. He did the math the same way she had done it. She could see it moving across his face. 1 ship, he said quietly. 1 ship. He said nothing for a long moment. Then he looked at his crew, tired and scared and holding themselves upright through sheer stubbornness. And something in his expression shifted. Not hope, not quite. Something steadier than hope. "Pass the word," he said. "Have everyone rest if they can, eat something, check on each other." He turned back to the scanner one more time. "We have company coming in more hours, and it sounds like things are going to get very loud when they arrive." The UNS Iron Covenant came out of its final jump exactly where Commander Elena Voss had calculated it would. She had run the numbers herself. She always ran the numbers herself. The Tanar system's 4th planet provided enough gravity interference to mask the jump signature from the Drath scanners for approximately 90 seconds after arrival. 90 seconds was enough. It was enough if you knew what to do with it, which Commander Voss did. "Jump complete," Lieutenant Hara called from the navigation station. "Position confirmed. We are inside the system." Voss stood at the front of the bridge with her hands clasped behind her back and looked at the main screen. The Seeker of Winds was on the far edge of the scanner, a small still shape that read like a dying ember. Low power output, minimal drive signature. A ship sitting dark and quiet and trying not to draw attention to itself. Around it, 3 other shapes moved in a slow circle, larger, angular. The scanner tagged them automatically. Drath Collective Warships, Class 3 Assault configuration. Armed. 3 of them, said Lieutenant Commander Rael from the tactical station, his voice confirming what the screen already showed. "All 3 are between us and the Velhari vessel. The closest one has broken pattern and moved to within 6 kilometers of the target. It's getting ready to board," said Ensign Diane from her seat at the communication station. "Yes," Voss said. She looked at the 3 Drath ships on the screen for a moment. She looked at the distance between her own ship and the Seeker of Winds. She looked at the timer in the corner of the main display, counting down the seconds of their approach window. "Battle stations," she said. "All weapons hot. Shields to full. Navigation, plot me a straight line to the Velhari vessel. I want to go right between those 3 ships." The bridge went to work. The Iron Covenant was a heavy cruiser, 240 meters from bow to stern, massing more than any 3 Drath assault ships combined. With weapon hardpoints along both flanks and a reinforced forward hull designed for exactly the kind of direct approach Voss was now ordering. She had commanded this ship for 6 years. She knew what it could do. More importantly, she knew what she could do with it. 90 seconds until our jump signature clears their passive scanners, Hara reported. "Then we move in 80, Voss said. "Comms, open a channel to the Velhari vessel on the tight beam frequency I used before, encoded." Diane worked her board. "Channel open, Commander." Voss leaned toward the pickup. Seeker of Winds, this is the Iron Covenant. We are in the system. We are approximately 22 minutes out from your position. Stay on the deck and keep your heads down. Things are about to get very busy out here. Covenant out. She straightened up and looked at the main screen again. In her 6 years commanding the Iron Covenant, and the 12 years before that serving on other ships, Elena Voss had been in 14 combat engagements. She had learned certain things from those engagements that she trusted the way she trusted gravity. Not because someone told her to trust them, but because she had tested them against the real world, and the real world had confirmed them. The first was that speed was armor. A ship moving with intent was harder to hit than a ship maneuvering cautiously. The second was that hesitation cost more lives than aggression did. The third, and this one she had learned from an old captain she had served under at Warship, a hard woman from New Auckland who had a scar along her jaw and no patience for philosophy, was that when someone calls for help, you go. You calculate risk on the way. You do not calculate risk first and go second. By the time you finish calculating, the people who needed you are already gone. 80 seconds, Hara said. All stations confirm ready, called Rail. Voss looked at her crew. 41 people on this bridge. 310 on the ship. All of them trained, all of them ready, most of them young. She knew their names. She knew the names of their families. She did not think about that right now. A head full, she said. Let's go get them. On the Seeker of Winds, Mira was at the communications console when the tight beam signal came through from the Iron Covenant. She's listened to it twice. Then she pulled up the scanner and looked for the human ship. She found it. Even on the Seeker of Winds' damaged reduced capacity scanner, the Iron Covenant was easy to see. A large, fast-moving contact coming in from the far edge of the system, its drive output climbing as it accelerated. It was not sneaking. It was not approaching carefully. It was simply coming forward, directly, at the highest speed its engines could produce. She watched it for a moment. Then she turned to Captain Sale. The human ship is moving toward us, she said. It is coming directly. It is not trying to flank or maneuver around the Drath. It is going straight at them. Sale came and looked at the scanner over her shoulder. He watched the Iron Covenant's contact moving across the screen. He watched the 3 Drath contacts that were between it and the Seeker of Winds. How long until they reach us, he said. 20 minutes. She paused. Maybe less. They are accelerating. Sale straightened up and looked at his bridge crew. Most of them had gathered near the scanner now, watching the same thing he was watching. The Iron Covenant's contact moving forward without slowing. The Drath ships beginning to shift their pattern in response. Get everyone away from the exterior hull sections, Sale said. Move as many people as possible to the inner decks. The medical bay should be moved deeper if we can. The medical bay is fixed, said the ship's engineer Oven from his station. The equipment is bolted down. We cannot move the patients. Then, put people around it. Sale looked at Mira. Keep that scanner running. I want to know every move those Drath ships make. She nodded and turned back to the console. Through the transparent viewing port on the forward wall of the command deck, the stars were completely still. Nothing about the sky outside told you that there was a fight coming. Nothing changed out there. Same stars, same black, same cold nothing in every direction. But the scanner showed everything. The Iron Covenant charging forward. The 3 Drath ships reorganizing, the circling pattern breaking apart as they responded to the incoming contact. They had seen the human ship. Of course they had. The Iron Covenant was not hiding. The Drath fleet commander's name was Veth Cardon, and he had been in Drath service for 31 years. He had taken the Seeker of Winds as a prize of opportunity. A soft target in claimed space, no weapons, no military escort. Well worth the effort for the technology and research data aboard. He had not expected complications. This region of the Outer Reach was not a place where complications appeared. The other civilizations had their agreements, their neutrality pacts, their very careful boundaries. Nobody came to claim Drath space uninvited. Nobody. He looked at the incoming contact on his scanner and felt something he did not often feel in 31 years of service. Identify, he said. His scanner operator worked the board. Human vessel. Heavy cruiser class. Iron Covenant. A pause. It is armed and moving at combat speed on a direct approach vector. Heading directly toward the Velhari target, Commander. Straight line. No deviation. Cardon looked at the screen for a moment. 1 human ship. Coming directly at 3 Drath warships. No attempt at a flanking approach. No request for communication. No cautious circling to assess the situation. Just a straight line at full speed, weapons hot. He knew human military doctrine. He had read the assessments. Aggressive engagement philosophy. High-risk tolerance. Often described in Drath tactical reports as unpredictable. The reports also noted that in every recorded engagement between human forces and other militaries, the humans had performed above assessed capability. The reports had not been written by people who had met a human ship head-on. "Open a channel," he said. His communications officer opened the channel. Carden kept his voice flat and formal. "Unidentified human vessel. This is the Drath Collective Warship, Dominion of the Edge. You are entering Drath Collective claimed space without authorization. This space and all vessels and materials within it are under Drath Collective jurisdiction. You will stand down and reverse course immediately. Any further approach will be considered an act of hostility. This is your only warning." He waited. The response came back fast. No delay. No pause for consideration. A woman's voice, clear and flat as a blade laid on a table. "Drath Warship, this is Commander Elena Voss of the UNS Iron Covenant, United Nations Space Command. The vessel you are currently threatening is a civilian research ship in distress. We are responding to their emergency call. We will be taking the crew of that ship aboard and leaving this area. You may stand down or you may not. That is your choice to make. But we are not stopping." Silence. Carden looked at his scanner. The Iron Covenant had not changed course by a single degree, had not slowed, was still coming, straight ahead, directly toward his 3 ships and the Velhari vessel behind them. His second-in-command, Dren, came to stand beside him and looked at the screen. "It is not turning," Dren said. His voice had a strange quality to it. "No," Carden said. "Commander," Dren looked at him. "It is not going to turn." "Get the fleet into engagement formation," Carden said. On the Seeker of Winds, Mira watched the scanner and felt the whole bridge go quiet around her. The 3 Drath ships were separating, spreading out, repositioning, a combat formation. She recognized it from the tactical database she had pulled up. They were preparing to engage the incoming vessel from multiple angles at once to divide its defenses. The Iron Covenant did not change its approach. "It is not slowing down," said one of the bridge crew behind her, a young communications technician, barely 2 years out of training. His voice was very small. "No," Mira said. "There are 3 of them," he said. 3 Drath warships, and it is 1 ship, I know." She watched the screen. She watched the distance between the Iron Covenant and the Drath formation close on the scanner readout. The numbers counted down steadily. She had spent 3 years studying humans, their history, their language, their political structures. She had read about their wars, and they had wars, many of them, an almost unbelievable number of wars for a species that had only been in space for 160 years. She had read about the old ones, the planet-side ones, the terrible ones, and the newer ones, the space ones, the ones they had fought on the way to becoming what they were now. She had read all of it and thought she understood them reasonably well. She looked at the Iron Covenant on the scanner. She understood nothing. "Captain," she said. "Whatever is about to happen." She stopped. "Yes," Sale said from behind her. She had not finished the sentence. He had answered it anyway. The numbers on the scanner kept counting down. The Drath ships finished spreading into their engagement pattern. The Iron Covenant came forward without hesitation, without slowing, without any sign at all that the 3 warships in its path were anything other than an inconvenience on the way to where it was going. In 20 minutes, Mira would see what a human warship did when it had decided to fight. She pulled the scanner feed to full display and watched every second of the distance closing. The first Drath shot hit the Iron Covenant on the forward port shield at a range of 4,000 kilometers. The shields held. The Iron Covenant did not slow down. "Return fire," Commander Voss said. "Target the lead ship. Full spread on forward batteries." The Iron Covenant's forward guns opened up. 8 heavy rail cannons and 4 missile batteries firing together. Not a warning shot, not a ranging burst, but a full combat salvo aimed directly at the Drath ship that had shot first. The rounds traveled the 4,000-kilometer gap in seconds. Half of them hit. The Drath lead ship's shields took the impact. They held too, but the ship's position shifted, knocked sideways by the force of it, its pattern of movement broken, its momentum interrupted. It was the first sign that something had gone wrong with the Drath commander's plan. The plan had assumed the human ship would stop, or at least slow when fired upon. It had not. "Navigation, cut across the bow of the lead ship," Voss said. "Get us between it and the Velhari vessel. Tactical, put continuous fire on ship 2 as we pass. I want it busy. Comms, relay our position updates to the Velhari ship every 30 seconds. Her crew moved. She had trained them for 3 years to move exactly this way. Not frantically, not with shouting, but with the calm, precise urgency of people who had decided what they were doing and were doing it. The Iron Covenant turned 15 degrees and drove straight past the Drath-led ship at a distance of less than 600 meters. Close enough, Voss noted with a private, flat sort of satisfaction, that she could probably have seen the Drath crew through their viewing ports if she had cared to look. The Drath lead ship spun to track her. Its guns fired 3 more times. 2 shots glanced off the port shields. 1 hit the hull. "Hull breach," reported the damage control officer, Lieutenant Pava, from her station. Her voice was steady. Pava's voice was always steady. Section 14, non-critical. Sealing now. Shields at 78% on the port side. Compensate, Voss said, compensating. On the main screen, the Seeker of Winds was getting closer. The Drath formation was trying to reorganize. All three ships turning, adjusting, attempting to keep the Iron Covenant in a crossfire. Voss could see what they were doing. She had seen it before. It was a sound tactic. It assumed a straight-line enemy. She turned again, not the direction the Drath expected. Hard to starboard, angling across the bow of Drath Ship 3, putting it between her and Ship 2 for 3 seconds, long enough to take 2 hits from Ship 2 before Ship 3 realized what was happening and moved. She fired port batteries at Ship 3 at close range. She felt the impacts through the deck plates. Ship 3's shields are down to 40%, Rail reported, from tactical. Their engines are reading irregular. Hit them again. Ship 2 is coming around behind us, I know. Voss looked at her display. Hara, flip us. Now. The Iron Covenant rotated 180 degrees on its axis, a maneuver that its designers had included for exactly this kind of close-range engagement, and that most ship commanders used rarely because it required perfect trust in your navigation officer. Hara was the best navigation officer Voss had ever had. She did not hesitate. The ship flipped. For half a second the stars on the main screen spun. Then the Iron Covenant was facing backward relative to its direction of travel, still moving forward for momentum, but now looking directly at Drath Ship 2 as it came around. Both ships fired at the same moment. The impact was hard enough that Voss grabbed the rail in front of her. 2 crew members fell from their chairs. The lights on the bridge stuttered, but Voss had already seen the result on her screen before the shaking stopped. Ship 2's forward shields were gone. She did not give it time to recover. All forward batteries on Ship 2, she said. Everything we have. Seeker of Winds Mira had stopped breathing without noticing. The scanner showed everything. Every movement of every ship, every weapon's discharge. She could track the battle the way you tracked a storm from inside a very small room. Aware of the shape of it, aware of the violence of it, but unable to quite believe that it was real. The Iron Covenant was everywhere at once. That was the only way she could describe what she saw on the scanner. It was one ship, she knew that. She could see the single contact on the readout, but it moved in a way that made it feel like more. Turning, accelerating, cutting across the Drath formation, forcing the 3 ships to keep adjusting their positions, never letting them settle into a stable firing line. Every time the Drath ships found an angle on the Iron Covenant was already somewhere else. It had been hit. She could see that too. The scan showed a hull breach, small, sealed quickly but real. The human ship was taking damage. It was absorbing fire from 3 directions, and it was still moving, still attacking, still going after those ships with everything it had. It is going to get itself destroyed, said Owen, the engineer, from behind her. She did not answer. On the scanner, Ship 2 had just taken a full volley from the Iron Covenant at close range. Its shields had gone dark. It was drifting sideways, its engine output fluctuating wildly. Its gun still firing, but without direction now. The Iron Covenant turned past it and went straight at Ship 3. It is not going to get itself destroyed, Captain Sale said quietly. You cannot know that, Owen said. No, Sale said. But look at how it moves. Mira looked. She had been looking. She had not been able to stop looking. The Iron Covenant moved like a creature that had spent its entire life learning how to survive being hit. Not avoiding damage. She was past believing it could avoid damage now, but absorbing it, adapting around it. When the shields weakened on one side, it angled that side away without stopping, without hesitating. When one battery went dark from a hit, the other batteries shifted their firing arcs to compensate. It was not clean. It was not graceful. But it was relentless in a way that went beyond tactics, beyond training, and into something that felt almost personal. Like the ship itself was angry. She knew that was not rational. A ship did not get angry. But she could not think of a better word for what the scanner was showing her. Captain, said the young technician behind her. His voice was very different from the small, scared voice he had used 20 minutes ago. That ship, it has been hit 5 times. Yes, Sale said, and it is still attacking. Yes, a silence. Then, I have never seen anything like that. Neither have I, said Captain Sale. On the Iron Covenant, Commander Voss was working through her 3rd damage report in 11 minutes. The hull had taken 3 hits. 1 breach in Section 14 sealed, 1 in Section 20 sealed, 1 in the aft engineering section that Pava was still working on. Shields were at 51% overall, weaker on the port side. One of the forward missile batteries had taken a direct impact and was offline. 3 crew members had been injured, 1 seriously. She registered all of this, filed it in the part of her mind that kept track without dwelling on it. Ship 3 is pulling back, Rail said. She looked up at the main screen. Ship 3, the one she had hammered twice in the opening minutes, was indeed moving away, its engine output reduced, its movement erratic, damaged, maybe badly damaged. She watched it for a moment. "Don't let it go," she said. "I don't want it circling back and hitting us from behind. Aft batteries, keep it occupied." Status on Ship 2? Drifting. Engines are out. Weapons are intermittent. I'm reading life signs aboard. They're alive in there, just not moving anywhere. "Leave them," Voss said. "They're not a threat right now." She looked at the screen. Ship 1, the lead ship, the one that had fired first, was still fully operational, circling, probing, looking for an angle. It was being careful now, more careful than it had been at the start of this engagement. Good. Careful meant uncertain. Uncertain meant it was working from a plan that was not going the way the plan was supposed to go. "Hara," she said, "get me between Ship 1 and the Valhari vessel. I want to be between that ship and those civilians, plotting now. The moment we have a clear line, I want full forward batteries on Ship 1. No more dancing. I'm done dancing." "Commander," Rail's voice had a different quality to it. "Ship 1 is hailing us." Voss looked at her tactical display for a moment. Then she looked at the Seeker of Winds on the scanner. Still dark and still, sitting quietly while the fight raged between it and the Drath ships. "Put it through," she said. The voice that came over the channel was Drath. A rough, controlled voice with the cadence of someone who was accustomed to giving orders, and not accustomed to being in the position it was currently in. "Human vessel. This engagement is unnecessary." The Valhari research ship entered Drath-claimed territory without authorization. "We have legal jurisdiction over all salvage and crews within this zone, under the Outer Reach Boundary Agreement. We have the documentation. You are interfering in a legal Drath collective operation." Voss let the silence sit for 10 seconds after the voice finished. Then she said, "Those are civilians. They called for help. We came. This does not concern you." "They called for help," Voss said again. "It concerns us. If you continue this engagement, there will be formal consequences. The Drath Collective will lodge a protest with the Galactic Union." "You are welcome to do that," Voss said. "After I leave. Right now I am busy." She looked at Rail and drew one finger across her throat. Rail cut the channel. "Full forward batteries," Voss said. "Bring us around." The battle for Ship 1 lasted another 14 minutes. It was a harder fight than the opening exchanges had been. The Drath commander on Ship 1 was experienced and disciplined, and had learned from watching what had happened to his other two ships. He fought defensively, trying to hold distance, trying to use the threat of Ship 3, still limping at the edge of the scanner, as a distraction. He was good, Voss was better. Not because she had better weapons or a better ship, though the Iron Covenant was a fine ship and she would argue about its guns with anyone. She was better because she had decided before she arrived in this system that she was not leaving without the Valhari crew. And that decision had already been made, which meant every calculation she ran in the middle of the battle was not whether to stay but only how to win fastest. The Drath commander was still calculating whether to stay. That difference was 3 minutes. At the end of those 3 minutes, Ship 1's shields failed. Its engines dropped to maneuvering speed only. 2 of its gun batteries went offline. It was not destroyed. Voss had not been trying to destroy it. She had no desire to kill a crew of 200 people if she could avoid it. But it was effectively out of the fight. "Ship 1 is requesting ceasefire," Rail said. "They have it," Voss said. "On one condition. They back off to 5,000 kilometers and stay there. If they move inside 5,000, we resume. Tell them that." Rail passed the message. The response came back fast. Ship 1 was moving to 5,000 kilometers. Voss looked at the main screen for a moment. Ship 1 drifting back. Ship 2 still dark and floating. Ship 3 a faint contact at the far edge of the scanner, still retreating. The Seeker of Winds ahead of her, sitting still, its beacon blinking steadily. "All stop," she said. "Get me a dock with the Valhari vessel. We are going to go get those people." She turned from the main screen and walked toward the rear of the bridge. She stopped at the damage control station. "Pava, the 3 injured. Status." Pava looked up. She had been running reports on the aft hull breach for the last 7 minutes simultaneously. "Ensign Gore has a fractured shoulder and 2 cracked ribs. He's stable, walking, refusing to go to the medical bay. Lieutenant West has a head laceration, same status. Petty Officer Tan." She paused for 1/2 second. "She took shrapnel in the aft section. She's in surgery now. Prognosis? Dr. Chen says she'll make it." Another 1/2 second pause, the kind that had something in it. "He says it will take time. Understood." Voss held Pava's eyes for a moment. Pava nodded. Voss nodded back. She went back to the front of the bridge. "Get me that dock," she said. Mira felt the Iron Covenantus before she heard it, a deep, slow vibration through the hull of the Seeker of Winds. Not the violent shaking of a weapon's impact, but a steady, measured pressure. Something massive pressing carefully against the airlock. She stood up from the console and looked at Captain Sale. He was already moving toward the main hatch, the dock seal engaged. The pressure equalized between the two ships. A low clunk of locking mechanisms. Then the hatch opened. The person standing in the hatchway was a human woman. Medium height, close-cropped dark hair going gray at the temples, a long scar along the left side of her jaw from what might have been a weapons burn, or might have been something else entirely. Her uniform was standard Earth military, gray-blue worn practical. She had alert gray eyes that moved across the bridge of the Seeker of Winds in about 2 seconds, taking in the damage and the crew and the dead scanner section and the red lighting, and then settled on Captain Sale. She extended her hand toward him. The human greeting gesture, open palm offered freely. "Commander Voss," she said, "Iron Covenant. Glad we got here in time." Sale looked at her hand for a moment, then he reached out and took it in the Vilhari fashion. 3 fingers briefly pressed. "Captain Sale, Seeker of Winds." A short pause. "You came. You called," Voss said, like it was that simple. Mira stood at the back of the bridge and watched Commander Elena Voss the way you watch something you are trying to understand. She had fought 3 Drath warships with 1 ship and walked through the docking hatch looking like someone who had been out for a long drive and was mildly ready for coffee. She was human. Mira had always known that factually. She had not known it like this before. The Seeker of Winds could not move under its own power. That was the first problem. The second was that the Iron Covenant had its own hull damage to deal with. The aft breach in Section 22 was holding, but barely, and the chief engineer had used some of his more colorful language when he described the state of the port shield generators. The third problem was the Drath ship sitting 5,000 kilometers away, still officially complying with the ceasefire, but pointing all of its functional weapons in their general direction. Commander Voss had a list of problems, and she was working through it in order, which was the only way she knew how to work through anything. "We cannot tow the Vilhari vessel," her chief engineer, Senior Chief Maddox, told her. He was a big man from the Scottish lowlands with enormous hands and a permanent expression of thoughtful displeasure. "Our tow systems are rated for Class 5 and below. That ship is a Class 7. We tow it at speed. We'll either crack its hull or tear our coupling right off the ship." "Best option," Voss said. "Transfer the survivors and any critical equipment they want to save. Leave the ship. Come back for it later with proper salvage equipment." Voss looked at him. "They've been in it for 3 weeks. It's their home. I know that." Maddox did not apologize. He never apologized for giving accurate information. "We still can't tow it." Voss nodded. "All right. Get a team over there and help them pull whatever they need. Personal items, research data, critical instruments. Give them 3 hours. 3 hours, Maddox said. With that Drath ship sitting out there? 2.5 then." She looked at her tactical display. "And tell your team to move fast." Mira spent the first hour of those 2.5 hours pulling data. Everything on the Seeker of Winds research servers, 3 weeks, dues of deep space scan data, biological sample analyses, stellar cartography updates, personal logs, 11 years of ongoing Vilhari biological research that one of the dead crew members had been conducting with a patience that deserved better than an end like this. She compressed it, encrypted it, and moved it onto portable storage cores one at a time. Each core was the size of her fist. She filled 7 of them. Human crew members from the Iron Covenant worked around her the whole time, 6 of them in pairs, moving through the ship with a systematic efficiency that was almost disconcerting to watch. They did not waste motion. They did not stand around deciding what to do next. Each pair had a section of the ship and they worked their section and moved to the next one, bagging equipment and data and personal items, asking the Seeker of Winds crew members what they wanted saved and then saving it without discussion. One of them, a young man with a round face and a badly bruised cheekbone from the battle, stopped beside Mira's console while she worked. "What are those?" he asked, nodding at the data cores. "Research data," she said. 11 years of biological field work. She kept working. "Some of it belonged to someone who died here today." The young man was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "I'll carry those for you, so you can get anything else you need." She looked at him. He was perhaps 22 years old. He had a bruised cheekbone and tired eyes, and he was offering to carry her data cores. "Thank you," she said. He picked up the case with the 7 cores in it and held it like it was made of something fragile. And she went back to the console and kept working. The medical transfer took longer. 2 of the injured Vilhari crew members could not be moved to standing position. The doctor's recommendation was that they be carried horizontally on their cots, which required navigating the narrow connecting hatch between the 2 ships on a stretcher. Human crew members from the Iron Covenant volunteered for this without being asked. 4 of them moved through that hatch 11 times, carrying the injured one by one while the Seeker of Winds creaked and settled around them. The young researcher named Pell, who had been talking in the old coastal dialect in the medical bay, was conscious by the time they came to move him. He looked up at the humans carrying his stretcher, at the steady, careful way they held him, at the concentrated expressions on their faces, and said nothing for a long moment. Then, in the old dialect, he said a phrase that translated roughly as, "These are good people nobody on the human team understood Velhari." But Mira heard it from the corridor and she wrote it down later in her personal log, because it seemed like the kind of thing that should be written down. Voss found Captain Sale in what remained of the command deck, sitting at his station, looking at his screens. Most of them were off now. The data had been transferred. The research cores were aboard the Iron Covenant. There was not much left to look at, but he was sitting there anyway, with the posture of someone doing a very hard thing in a very quiet way. She came and stood near him. She did not say anything immediately. After a moment, Sale said, 14 confirmed dead. We had 41 crew. I know, Voss said. I'm sorry. They were researchers. He looked at the dead screens. Scientists, biologists, cartographers. None of them were soldiers. None of them had any business being in a situation like this. Yeah, greedy. And yet here we are. He was quiet again for a moment. Then, you lost someone too. In the battle. She kept her face still. Petty Officer Tan is in surgery. The doctor expects her to recover fully. But there was risk to your own crew. He looked at her for the first time. For strangers. For people you had never met, in a system that has nothing to do with your government or your territory or your trade agreements. Voss met his eyes. Velhari eyes were large and deep-set, and they looked at you in a way that felt like they were looking for something specific, some particular thing, behind whatever you were saying. You called for help, she said. We heard it. The Galactic Union heard it, Sale said. The Kel Consortium heard it. The Sharath heard it. The Velhari military heard it. He paused. You came. Yes. Why? Voss thought about this for a moment. Not because she did not know the answer, but because she wanted to say it right. There are people, she said, who will tell you that the galaxy is too big and too dangerous for any species to take responsibility for anyone outside their own borders. There are treaties and neutrality agreements and non-interference compacts and 100 other ways of saying the same thing, which is, not our problem. We understand that position. We have read all the arguments for it. She stopped. She looked at the dead screens for a moment. We just don't agree. Sale was quiet for a long time after that. The Drath will file a formal complaint, he said finally. With the Galactic Union, they will call this an act of aggression. They will, Voss said. They probably already have. We will answer for it when we get back. And that does not concern you? She made a small, flat sound that was not quite a laugh. It concerns me a great deal. I've been in front of a union review board before. It is an unpleasant experience. She looked at him, less than leaving you here. He looked at her for another long moment. Then he stood up. He looked around his command deck one last time, at the dead screens and the cracked ceiling support, and the communications console, where Mira had been sitting when the human signal came through, at the dark navigator's station and the bent metal where the ceiling had come down. He breathed in once. I am ready, he said. The Seeker of Winds went dark behind them as the Iron Covenant pulled away. Mira stood at the viewing port in the corridor near the docking hatch and watched it recede. The ship grew smaller and then smaller still until it was a dark shape against the stars. Not lit, not moving, not broadcasting anything. Just floating there, a stopped thing in a very big empty place. She watched it until she could not see it anymore. You can come back for it, said a voice behind her. She turned. The young human crew member, the one who had carried her data cores, was standing in the corridor. He was off duty now by the look of him, his equipment vest unzipped, the bruise on his cheekbone darker than before. What? She said. The ship, he said. Once the political situation is sorted out, once the Drath back off from this area, you can come back with a salvage crew. Heavy tow equipment. The commander already put in a request for a Union monitoring buoy to be placed here, to document that the vessel is civilian property and mark it for recovery. He shrugged. She does that. After every recovery, she puts in the paperwork for whatever had to be left behind. Mira looked at him. She has done this before, yes, he said. How many times, he thought for a moment. He was not being evasive. She could tell he was actually counting. 4 times that I have been on this ship. 3 years. 4 recoveries. He looked at the viewing port at the empty space where the Seeker of Winds had been. Different systems, different species, different situations. He paused. Same call. Same answer. She looked at the empty space too. What is your name, she asked. Ensign Park, he said. J. Park. Science and Cartography Division, 3rd year. You are in cartography, Mira said. Yes. On a warship. The commander believes in a broad crew, he said, with the easy manner of someone who has been asked this before. She says that if a situation ever requires all 400 guns and nothing else, we have already made a bad choice somewhere earlier. Better to have people who can do more than fight. He looked at her. She is usually right about things like that. Mira thought about that for a moment. She thought about the system prompt priorities she had been taught in her diplomatic training. Hierarchy of civilization development, relative military capacity, known behavioral indices. Humans scored very specifically on all of them. Mid-tier civilizational development, high military growth rate, unpredictable diplomatic behavior. She thought about a ship charging 3 warships at full speed, taking 5 hits and not slowing down. She thought about a commander walking through a docking hatch looking mildly ready for coffee. She thought about an ensign from cartography, carrying her data cores carefully, like they were made of something fragile. What does she think about what happened here? Mira asked. Commander Voss. The battle. Is she satisfied with the outcome? Park considered this seriously. She won't say anything about it in front of the crew, he said. She doesn't celebrate engagements. She never has. She will hold a debrief. She will go over every decision we made and explain what was right and what was wrong, and she will not sleep well for the next week, because she never does after something like this. He paused. But the crew will know. The crew always knows. She'll stand a little taller for a few days. Not because of the fight. Because we got to you in time. Mira let that sit for a moment. Go rest, she told him. You look exhausted. He smiled, a small, tired human smile, and went. In the surgery bay of the Iron Covenant, Petty Officer Soratan was coming out of the anesthesia, slowly, the way you come up out of deep water. The first thing she was aware of was the smell. Disinfectant and recycled air, the specific combination that every space vessel medical bay smelled like, no matter the ship. She knew that smell. She had woken up to it twice before in her career, and both times her first thought had been the same one. Still here. The doctor was writing notes at the side counter. She turned her head and looked at him. Petty Officer, he said without looking up. Welcome back. The ship, she said. Her voice came out smaller than she intended. Intact. We won. He looked up then. You'll be in here for 2 days minimum, then light duty for 3 weeks. I'll argue with you about the 3 weeks, and you'll lose. She looked up at the ceiling. She thought about the explosion in the aft section, the sound of it, sharp and close, and then a hot white pressure that she had not had time to do anything about. She thought about the floor. Did we get them? She asked. The people we went for. 27 survivors aboard, the doctor said. 4 of them are in the secondary medical bay right now. Commander sends her regards. She'll come by when she gets a chance. 27 people. Soratan looked up at the ceiling of the medical bay and breathed. Still here. All of them. She closed her eyes and let herself go back under. The Galactic Union Station at Meridian Point was one of the largest structures in the known spiral arm. A wheel-shaped platform 8 kilometers in diameter, home to 17,000 permanent residents and a rotating population of delegates, diplomats, traders, and observers from over 40 recognized species. It sat at the crossing point of 4 major trade lanes and had not seen anything particularly interesting happen in 11 years. It had been waiting for the Iron Covenant for 3 days. The station's docking authority began transmitting approach instructions when the Iron Covenant was still 4 hours out. Then, 3 minutes later, a second set of transmissions began. These ones less polite, more official, bearing the header codes of the Union Emergency Council and the AT Collective's diplomatic mission simultaneously. Commander Voss read them in order, in her quarters with a cup of coffee. She read them twice, then she went to find Mira. Mira was in the Iron Covenant's research lab, which Ensign Park had quietly reorganized to accommodate the Vilhari data cores. She had been there for most of the 3-day journey, sleeping 4 hours a night on a cot. J. Park had dragged in, eating whatever was brought to her, working through the recovered research data for a purpose she had not yet fully explained to anyone. Voss knocked on the open door frame. Mira looked up. We dock in 4 hours, Voss said. There's going to be a review proceeding. The Drath Collective has filed a formal complaint with the Union Council. Interference in sovereign claimed space, unprovoked military engagement, seizure of territory-adjacent assets. She paused. That last one means your crew. They're calling you and your people assets. Mira looked at her for a moment. Assets, she said. Yes, not survivors, not people. Assets. That's the language they chose, Voss said. I thought you should know before we dock. Mira put down the datapad she had been holding. And you, she asked. What happens to you? To your crew? There will be a formal review of our actions. Union protocol in contested space engagements. Voss leaned against the door frame. Her voice was level. I've been through this before. The review board asks questions, and I answer them. Sometimes they agree with my decisions, and sometimes they issue a formal reprimand. I have 3 formal reprimands currently on file. 3, Mira said. 3. A small pause, each one for a rescue operation in an area someone else called contested. Mira looked at her. She thought about what she wanted to say. She had been thinking about it for 2 days. I have been studying human history, she said. In the downtime, using the ship's library files. Voss raised an eyebrow slightly but didn't say anything. Your species has a word, Mira said. An old word from long before you had space. The word is audacity, she pronounced it carefully. It means doing something that others consider impossible or inappropriate, with complete disregard for whether it is possible or appropriate. Voss let a corner of her mouth lift slightly. That's one definition. I looked at your recorded engagements, Mira continued. Not just the 5 on the public registry. I requested the union's observer reports through the research access I still have. 14 engagements in 12 years. 4 separate formal complaints filed by other species. 3 reprimands. She paused. 31 people recovered from distress situations. All of them in areas where other civilizations declined to act. All of them alive. Voss said nothing. 31 people, Mira said, before my crew. The number sat between them for a moment. 58, Voss said quietly, counting yours. Mira looked at her. Voss looked back. Neither of them said anything for a moment. I would like to testify at your review proceeding, Mira said. You're not required to. I know. Mira picked up her datapad again. I would like to. The docking was complicated. 3 Union security vessels met the Iron Covenant at the approach boundary. Official escort, technically. In practice, it meant they were watching where she went and making sure the Iron Covenant did not do anything that would make the next 3 days of diplomatic conversations more difficult than they already were. Voss accepted the escort without comment and followed them in. The Valhari government's representative was waiting at the docking bay. He was a senior official named Kyle Vor, gray-haired and formal, with the composed expression of someone who had spent decades in diplomatic service and was very good at not showing what he was thinking. He had 2 assistants with him and a formal statement prepared. He stepped forward when Captain Sale came through the hatch. Captain Sale. Kyle Vor pressed 3 fingers to his chest in the formal Valhari greeting. The High Council sends its profound relief at your safe return. The loss of your crew members is a grief we share fully. He paused. We have been in contact with the Galactic Union since the incident. The Council is prepared to support your account of events fully in the formal proceedings. Sale pressed 3 fingers back. Then he turned and gestured toward Voss, who was standing a step behind him. This is Commander Elena Voss, Sale said. UN's Iron Covenant. She is the reason any of us are standing here. Kyle Vor turned to Voss. He looked at her for a moment with the careful, measuring expression of a diplomat doing his job. Then something shifted in his face, small, controlled, but genuine. He pressed 3 fingers to his chest. It was the formal Valhari greeting of deep respect. Not the casual greeting, not the diplomatic greeting. The deep one, the one used for elders, for those who had given something significant. Voss blinked once. Then she pressed her right hand flat to her chest in the human acknowledgement of received honor. I was doing my job, she said. No, Kyle Vor said quietly. You were doing more than your job. The Union review proceeding began 2 days later in Chamber 7 of the Meridian Point Assembly Hall. The chamber seated 400 observers. Every seat was filled. The Union Emergency Council's presiding officer was a sheriff elder named Velkos, thin, gray-robed, precise in his movements and his words. He had been conducting Union review proceedings for 22 years and was known for his fairness and his patience in equal measure. He opened the proceedings with a standard formal statement. The purpose of this hearing was to review the events in the Tanar system, assess whether the actions of the UN's Iron Covenant were in compliance with the Interstellar Non-Interference Compact, and determine appropriate response. The Drath Collective's representative spoke first. He was large, broad-shouldered, in the formal black uniform of the Drath Diplomatic Corps, and he spoke for 40 minutes. He covered the Outer Reach Boundary Agreement, the legal framework of claimed space, the specific provisions of the Non-Interference Compact, and the documented history of human military expansion into contested areas. He used the word aggression 14 times. He used the phrase unprovoked attack 9 times. He referred to the Seeker of Winds crew as territory-adjacent assets 3 times before Velkos asked him to stop using that phrase. He presented the case clearly and thoroughly. Then Commander Voss took the floor. She stood at the center of the chamber and looked around at 400 observers from 40 species. She looked at the Union Council sitting in their elevated seats. She looked at the Drath representative. She had prepared no speech. She had a few notes on a small card which she looked at once and then set face down on the table. I received a distress call, she said. A civilian research vessel in danger, position data attached. Requesting assistance from any vessel of any species. I was the closest military asset in range. She paused. I went. She let that sit for a moment. The compact says that military action in contested space requires Union authorization except in cases of imminent threat to life. I made the determination that the Seeker of Winds crew was under imminent threat to life. Another pause. I stand by that determination. The Drath representative began to stand. Velkos held up one hand and he sat back down. Commander, Velkos said, you were aware that Drath Collective vessels were already present in the area? Yes. And that the Drath Collective had a standing claim to that region of space? Yes. And that the non-interference compact has been in place for 31 years, and that the purpose of that compact is to prevent exactly the kind of unilateral military action you took. Voss looked at him. Yes, she said, I was aware of all of that. And you proceeded regardless. I did. Silence in the chamber. Why? Velkos asked. Voss was quiet for a moment. Not uncertain, the pause of someone choosing words precisely. Because the compact was designed to prevent wars, she said. I understand that. I support that. The compact says don't go into other people's space and start trouble. That is a reasonable rule. She looked at the council. It is not a rule that says, when someone calls for help, do the math on whether helping them is politically convenient, and then act accordingly. That is not what the compact says. That is what we have turned it into. A murmur went through the chamber, not all of it disapproving. 27 people are alive today, Voss said. I damaged 3 Drath warships. I did not destroy them. Their crews are alive. The Seeker of Winds survivors are alive. She looked at the Drath representative. If your complaint is that I went into contested space and fought your ships, I accept that complaint. I would make the same decision again. She looked at the council. I would make it every time. The chamber was very quiet. Then Mira stood up. She had been given a seat in the observer's gallery. She was not on the official speaker list. But she stood, and she was a Velhari researcher with a diplomatic access badge, and she spoke before anyone could stop her. I would like to say something, she said. Her voice carried clearly across the chamber. I was the communications officer aboard the Seeker of Winds during the attack. I received the responses from every civilization we contacted for help. She looked at the council. The Union told us to wait 12 hours. The Kel Consortium cited their neutrality agreement. The Sharath said they could not intervene. Our own military needed authorization that would take longer than our air supply. She paused. Commander Voss sent a message that said, we hear you, we are coming. No condition, no authorization requests, no calculation of political cost. She looked out at the chamber. My colleagues are alive. 11 of us are not because help came too late for them. But 27 of us are alive because one commander decided that a distress call was reason enough. The chamber was still. I do not know what the compact says, Mira said. I know what humanity did. She sat down. The Union review proceeding issued its formal decision 4 days later. Commander Voss received a formal reprimand, her 4th, for conducting unauthorized military action in contested space. The Union's legal opinion held that the non-interference compact had been technically breached. The Union's supplementary opinion, added by 3 of the 7 council members, noted that the emergency exception clause of the compact had merit and recommended a formal review of the clause's scope, to be completed within 18 months. The Drath Collective's complaint was acknowledged and filed. No punitive action was taken against the Iron Covenant or its crew. The Velhari High Council, in a separate statement released the same day, formally thanked the United Nations Space Command for its response to the Seeker of Winds distress call. They described the action as an example of the highest possible interstellar conduct. They requested that Commander Elena Voss be considered for the Velhari Star of Service, the highest civilian honor their government could give to a non-Velhari person. It was the first time in recorded history that the Star of Service had been offered to a human. Voss sent a polite written response saying she was honored, and that the credit belonged to her crew. Mira stood at the observation deck of Meridian Point on the last night before her transport back to Velhari space departed. The stars were extremely clear from the deck's transparent panels, no atmosphere to blur them, no city lights to wash them out, just stars in every direction, hundreds of them, the ones close enough to see as individual points, and behind them the smear of millions more that were too far to distinguish. She had her data pad with her. She was not looking at it. A footstep behind her. Voss came and stood beside her at the panel. They stood there for a moment without speaking, looking at the stars. Your 4th reprimand, Mira said. Yes. Does it bother you? Voss was quiet for a moment. The paperwork bothers me, she said. The review board has terrible coffee. A small pause. The reprimand itself, no, not particularly. You will do it again, Mira said. Not a question. If someone calls, Voss said. Yes. Mira looked at the stars. At all that dark between them and everything in it. At the vast, cold, empty distance between any one point of light and any other, and how alone a ship could be in all of that. I have been thinking, she said, about why it is that no one else came. Voss waited. The other civilizations, the ones who declined, they were not cruel, they were not indifferent, not exactly. They had rules. Good rules, perhaps. Rules designed to keep large conflicts from starting. Rules that made sense when they were written. She paused. But somewhere along the way, the rules became more important than the reason the rules existed. Yes, Voss said. You have the same rules, Mira said. The compact applies to you too, it does. But you came anyway. Someone called, Voss said simply. That's always been enough for us. Mira looked at her. In the blue-white light of the observation deck, Voss's face was still and quiet, the scar along her jaw, the gray at her temples, the alert eyes that had looked at 3 Drath warships on a scanner, and had apparently decided that this was a manageable problem. What does humanity want? Mira asked. From the galaxy, I mean. From all of this. Your species has been in space for 160 years. You are expanding, you are growing. The other species watch you, and some of them are nervous about it. She paused. What is it that you are trying to be? Voss was quiet for a long moment. Useful, she said finally. Just that one word, and nothing else. Mira looked back at the stars. She thought about 11 people who had not made it. She thought about the ones who had. She thought about a single tight beam signal cutting through all that dark, across all those kilometers of nothing, finding the broken seeker of winds and saying, "We hear you, we are coming." She thought that useful was either the most modest word in any language, or the largest. Maybe both. The stars did not change. They never changed. Same ones that had been there the night before and would be there long after every ship in this station was gone. But for the first time in her career, in all the years she had spent studying them, mapping them, trying to understand the life that moved between them, Mira looked at those stars and felt something she had not felt since before the Drath ships appeared on the scanner 3 weeks ago. Not safe. She was not naive enough to call it safe, but something closer to safe than before. 6 weeks later, another distress signal went out. A transport ship, Class 4 civilian, drive failure, life support running on backup power, 3 days from the nearest station and losing time. Position data attached, requesting immediate assistance from any vessel of any species. The Galactic Union's relay station received it. The Union Emergency Council took the matter under advisement. The Kel Consortium's nearest patrol ship received it. The patrol commander noted the ship's location relative to Kel trade lane boundaries and filed a report. The UNS, a human cruiser, 2 years in service, fresh crew, new commander, received it at a range of 6 hours at maximum drive. The Resolute D's commander was 31 years old and had been following the Tanar system proceedings carefully. She had her own 4 formal reprimands, accumulated with some speed, and she had a copy of Commander Voss's Union floor statement saved in her personal files. She read the distress call once. She did not call for a review. She did not request Union authorization. She did not calculate the political geometry of where the stranded transport sat relative to whose claimed space. She gave one order. All ahead full. Get me there. The Resolute turned toward the signal and moved. The stars ahead of it were cold and very far away, and absolutely full of people who might need someone to answer when they called. Humanity intended to answer. It always had.